When we talk about leadership, we often only think about big and powerful men, often politicians, people who are in power. But in fact, when we talk about leadership, we should be talking about ourselves. We should be talking about all of us. Because at some level, you are leading, you are making decisions. And even when you aren't making decisions, that in itself is a decision. And in these uncertain times, the question is, what is the role of leadership as we try and navigate uncertainty? And to help us with this conversation, I am joined by Phetsile Dlamini, who is an executive coach as well as a leadership and strategic partner, to help us really understand how leadership can be used as a tool, what leadership is as a concept for an individual, for leading communities, but also how we can make sense of leadership globally. I am Sebenzile Nkambule, and this is Context. Every day we're flooded with information, group chats, social media, breaking news, you name it. But sometimes what we really need is context. I am Sebenzile Nkambule, and each week right here on Context, we slow things down just enough to understand what is really going on in our lives, in our work, in our cultures, and in our conversations. We have smart discussions, honest reflections, and stories that help us make sense of this very moment that we are living in. Because once you have context, everything looks different. Follow Context with Sebenzile Nkambule wherever you listen. This morning, I'm very excited to be joined by Phetsile Dlamini, who is an executive coach and leadership and people strategy partner. And today we'll be talking about leadership in uncertain times, right? There's a lot happening in the world. And so we've brought in an expert to help us. And I emphasize that because she doesn't want me to call her an expert. And she'll tell us why. Phetsile, good morning. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to start there. I've been asking you all morning why you don't want to be named an expert, because this is the work you do every day, all the time.
I think I'll start off by saying an expert almost gives superiority over the other, and it almost sends a message that I know it all.
Yeah.
Whereas I approach my daily work and my mission with an understanding that I'm on a journey, and that journey of learning never ends. And therefore, I'll never get to the end point of it. Mm-hmm. And so there's more, as much as I know so much, there's also more that I don't know. And especially when I'm engaging with people, there's an understanding that they also hold pockets of knowledge, of experience, and skill sets that are not in competition with mine, but maybe possibly are complementary.
Yeah.
So I go with the word I'm a partner, because I believe that it almost levels the platform in which we engage or we do work. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So how are you coming into this conversation today?
I'm coming in because my daily work is working with leadership teams, either individually when I'm coaching them or as a collective when I work with leadership teams. So I am cognizant of the pressure, the uncertainty, the brittleness, the just ever-changing times and pressures. I mean, we're waking up to petrol and diesel like astronomical heights. We're waking up to clients that are changing briefs and strategies. Strategies today are strategies, but they're emergent, because they must respond to the ever changes that we're encountering. So there is no certainty. Yeah. I think that's the context you find me. So I'm always open and curious about what it means and how it impacts people. Yeah. Yeah, and particularly the teams that I'm working with.
Does it make you anxious, though, when you know thinking about the times that we're living in, especially when a lot of it is not in our control, right? You've got a couple of big men that decide on their own, let's switch things up, and it then the ripple effects affects all of us, where we had no part to play but are affected because we are within a global community. And I don't know if maybe I framed the question as somebody who likes being in control, and I'm working through that. And so the anxiousness that comes with being affected by things you're not in control of. How do you navigate that?
I think I want to confess I am an anxious person.
Mm-hmm.
But being anxious doesn't mean I'm led always by my anxiety.
Right.
So the fact that I can acknowledge my anxiety means that I'm aware and I can actually put a finger to what it's driving in a given moment.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm present to that moment. So the danger with anxiety is if it runs ahead of you and you are swooped up with a lot of tasks, a lot of things to get accomplished, a lot of calls to respond to, you almost miss the presence of anxiety, and then it drives you. And when we are in an anxious state, right, we are in the worst case scenario of what would eventually unfold.
Mm-hmm.
We're not almost clear and present about what is actually in front of us.
Yeah.
So anxiety tells us that, it's going to be horrible. We won't make it. It's a near-death almost experience. And that drives probably unproductive patterns of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what I've found useful is, and I know this is probably people will think, it's been said repeatedly, but is how can you be mindful, present, and grounded in the moment that we have and the moment that you're encountering?
Yeah.
Because that allows you to see exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
As opposed to when we're not and we're living in the scenarios in our heads, or the speculation that we're listening to, or the noise that surrounds us. So when I'm present, I'm mindful, I'm grounded, I can actually look around and be in touch with what's actually happening for me today.
Mm-hmm.
So this morning, I'll give you an example. The WhatsApp family group, everyone's hyped up about this petrol price. So I just had to remind myself that I filled my car before the hype. And maybe I need to think about the trips that I'm going to make.
Yeah.
And really prioritize where I can travel and where I don't need to travel, so that I'm not hit as hard by this. But if I wasn't, I could have jumped on the bandwagon of saying it's going to cost me so much, and basically almost lose touch with the fact that I can still make choices. I can still make decisions.
Yeah.
I can still minimize, I won't eradicate, but I'll minimize the impact of this hike on my life if I'm just a little careful about my travel.
Yeah, yeah. And that's not, or maybe let me ask you to explain the difference between resigning yourself to what's happening and meaning you are devoid of agency versus, again, being mindful, maybe pausing, slowing down, assessing fully what is happening. And a particular moment comes to mind. This was in Parliament during the ad hoc committee. I'm so glad it's over. Gosh, that was such a mess. Side note. So one of the members of Parliament asked General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi about his safety since the July 6th briefing, right? Like, I don't know if the question was about whether he's augmented his security detail or he's afraid for his life, that sort of thing. And his response, in a paraphrase, was, we're all going to die, right? Death is going to find you, whether it finds you, you know what I mean? It's going to find you anyway. So why on earth are you panicking about it? Now, maybe if we take that particular response, I don't know if it's a good example to support the question I'm asking you about, resignation versus kind of being mindful of what is happening. Because part of saying, but we're all going to die, so why are we worried about it, feels like it's both I can't do anything about it, right? It's an eventual, which is fact. It'll come whenever you don't get to have a say about it. Or is it just, again, something that you are conscious of, that it'll happen, but you don't let it now affect the kind of life you lead, right? You're now not looking over your shoulder all the time as a result of that. It's just it may happen, it will happen. How it happens, you don't know, but get on with what you're doing. That distinction.
I'm going to say it differently, because in life, we lose our sense of agency. So agency is actually quite a powerful point in how we lead our lives.
Yeah.
Because we do get to a point where we feel devoid of agency, particularly when we are overwhelmed and a lot of things are going against what you would want to see have happen, right? And so you get to a point where you feel like, what's the effort in me trying to make a way or to hatch a plan, because I'm overwhelmed by my circumstances. I'm being let down maybe by people that I've relied upon to support me. And I'm finding a difficulty in rerouting, I'll just use that terminology,
right,
in terms of hatching another plan, my plan B, C. I'm running out of options. There's almost a resignation there. And it can be a valid place to be in, because as it is, it's so overwhelming. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I really can't influence certain things. You spoke about it earlier. And maybe the people around me who are my support structure are perhaps letting me down to some extent, or not available for me to support. That almost deflates me, right? On the other hand, there's an acceptance of the current threats we face. And I think living in South Africa, we know that we could get mugged, we could get hijacked. The realities are there. But in knowing them, it's not going to stop me from, embarking on a grand plan. I'm going to put in place a plan and execute it, cognizant of what the threats are. So I'm not in General Mkonazi's head, but I can imagine what he's saying is there's a reality that I'm going to die, and I can't prevent that. But I can obviously be vigilant to some extent about not putting myself in situations. But at the same time, because I'm driven, remember the first part where I can see my plan unfolding, I can see that I've got a bit of traction. I'm not going to let the threat of a potential death stamper me. I'm so committed to what I want to do that I'm going to go ahead with it, knowing that it might aggravate other people. I run the risk of rubbing up people the wrong way, but it's not going to stop me. And maybe his second part is also, maybe I'm galvanizing a bit of support around my plan. So there's a little bit of confidence now that let me continue around that way. So the stuff that might happen to me, that's an external thing, is almost dialed down. And it's not the noise I listen to every day. So he might just have made a callous, loose statement about we're all going to die. But my interpretation of it, he's saying, it's almost like me when I say, what can I do about the war in Iran? Really, I could maybe be an activist, but actually looking at my commitments in the day, there's nothing I can do. I can pray for peace and that something's going to happen. I want to advance my business. I'm looking for new clients. I'm seeing platforms that are supporting me. This one, I'm going to dial it down a bit.
Yeah.
But maybe at some point, I'm in an engagement with my client and they're being impacted. It immediately goes up.
Yeah.
Because now we need to devise strategies around, minimizing the impact on it. So it just depends on where we're sitting.
Yeah.
In terms of what will dampen or even... It starts by sapping out the energy in my agency until it drains it completely. And then I'm almost like lifeless. I'm like, okay, I'm just going to bob along now. I'm not going to plan anything. I'm not going to initiate anything Because what's the point? I'm not getting the support that I need, and almost the world is against me.
On just perhaps to close the loop on where we started, right, about how you partner with the people you work with, the clients that you work with, and your aversion to the word expert. Do you think that the coaching world has expanded quite a bit, or maybe one is just aware of it? Because every so often you meet somebody who's a coach. Every so often you meet somebody who's a leadership that you support. Like I don't know if maybe it's just my own awareness, where I'm seeing it a lot more coming across, people who are doing that sort of thing. I just kind of feel like, and granted that people who've put in the work, like yourself, right? So let me give you the question and then my preamble, because you said I ask very, very lengthy questions. I used to be better about questions. Ask the question and get the answer. But I want to give the co-frame, the context to say how I got to the question. But the question is, what does it take, right, to do what you do well? Because my expectation is that you have to have put in the hours. I enjoy football, so I use a lot of football analogies, that you're gonna come in and coach. If you've played, great, you have that particular perspective, but the work really in understanding what it is that you're doing, you've put in the hours, you understand various philosophies, systems of play, people management, like you've done stuff, but also you've lived and you've seen some stuff along the way. So when I hear somebody who's like, even my age, like 30-year-old, you're what are you coaching? Like, I just feel like you need some time, because some things you just come to be aware of. I think over time, and maybe you want to push back there. So back to my question on what it actually takes to do this work and to do it well. But is my assessment that there's and they coaches, which is fine, but is this an oddity in that trend?
Okay. I'm just going to acknowledge the fact that you said I'm old.
No, I don't.
And I take it.
I've
seen my stripes. But I also want to acknowledge what you're saying around the fact that there's a lot of people who evolve as coaches.
Yes.
And I think even when I embarked on the course, and mine was a lengthy, I went on an 18-month journey to be accredited as a coach.
Yeah.
I've also gone through quite a lot of rigor. The International Coaching Federation, which is the body of coaching globally, you go through certification processes with them. You renew them every 3 years. So
you've been an executive yourself, right?
Yes. And I hold myself to that standard. But I want to shift a bit and say, I wonder why there's so many coaches evolving. And I'm saying there's a response to a demand for this kind of support. Because if you think about it, as human beings, where are we taught to be human beings, right? There's so many things that are taken for granted about how we will lead ourselves in life. And then later, we're given big responsibilities in corporates, maybe even before we get to corporates. Within our family household, I'm maybe the eldest, or perhaps I'm now looking after siblings or extended family. I have a leadership. I'm actually also a parent, so I'm taking care of the well-being of my kids, my partner, the people that live with me. And then I get into corporate, and because of some competence and skill, I'm now being given this responsibility to lead that, right? But there is nowhere that I'm aware of. Maybe now certain schools are beginning to pay a particular attention to character development in a child, where they talk about the whole child, not just the performance. But I'm coming in an era where, certain things like emotional intelligence, which was a big word, where were we being taught? But the absence of it was almost penalized.
Yeah.
She has no EQ. How dare she?
Yeah.
Where was she being schooled or supported to develop that level of competence? So there's certain personal competencies that we don't get supported in developing. So I'm saying maybe the surge in coaches is in response to the fact that people are grappling on the daily around just certain things that help them get by. Even the issue of agency. I want to get things done, but I don't know how, or I'm floundering because there's a lot of barriers in my way. I'm looking for a coach. But maybe I'm just looking for a coach because I just need somebody to hold me accountable. And there might be no depth in what they're doing with me, but they're just keeping me honest on this plan that I have, because I've found myself procrastinating, I've found myself losing my way, I've found myself being distracted, and I'm not getting on track. So maybe there's a coach who's just sitting with me on a regular, asking me particular questions, but helping me go along the way. And so there is a differential in terms of the skill set that we see in coaches out there.
Yeah.
And that maybe is in the detail now, to say when you are approached or someone's positioning themselves as a coach, there's a little bit of an inquiry you can do to ascertain what it is that they've been through in terms of the pedagogy or the kind of training and the kind of practice and the kind of experiential work they've put themselves through in order to qualify them. And I think most coaches will put that up front when they share their profile or their credentials. They'll even speak to who they've worked with. They'll even speak to the type of people they're working with. So I don't believe in policing necessarily. I think it's important that we have structures like Comensa and ICF that almost take on that responsibility of being almost an oversight body for coaching professionals. Because when you now want to split hairs, you'll ask people whether they are accredited by which body. And then you'll start seeing the numbers drop.
Yeah.
Yes. And then you'll start seeing almost the cream rise to the surface. But I think for me, as long as people are demanding something, there's a market. And I think people who are evolving as coaches are responding to that demand in the market. And maybe, yes, we want them to conduct themselves in a certain way. There's certain principles in terms of how we conduct ourselves as coaches. I want to advocate that people adhere to that. Because when you are in partnership with someone as a coach, this is somebody's life that you're almost influencing or impacting. So you can't take it for granted. The kind of decisions they make through the process, the kind of exploration they go through, even what you may think are just light questions could be triggering and evoke so much for an individual. So I think my caution to coaches overall is the responsibility we have in being in partnership and working with somebody is huge. And therefore, we shouldn't take it for granted because we are almost in a position where we are entrusted by somebody.
Yeah.
And they are reliant on us and they're looking to us. And therefore, we've got a huge responsibility in terms of how we support and serve them. Yeah.
Is there or does it happen a lot where that line between therapy and coaching is crossed? So you're in conversation with someone and it's like this maybe is no longer about, the workplace or a specific professional issue that maybe they need to see a therapist? Or have you in your own development, in your work, have also needed to take on those expertise or have some of those qualities of a therapist because some issues may emerge in the process of coaching?
So maybe let me begin by differentiating therapy and coaching.
Yeah.
by saying, and I'm being just like it's not a scientific definition, I'm just creating a distinction for the viewer, is when you're in therapy, there's almost a backward past orientation to what you're doing. There's something in your life, whether it's an incident or an experience or a recollection of something that almost is hindering your present moment.
Right.
So it's almost taking away from you being full and whole and purposeful with agency drawing forward. So it's a distraction, and it can also be debilitating or can create a bit of an incapacity in the sense that I can't show up as my full self because of that. And we see it typically with grief, even illness, even misfortunes, traumas. If horrific incidents happen to people, they can't resume their normal life because they've been impacted gravely by that. So therapy is a way of actually going back to unpack what that could have been, the meaning you associated with it, because a lot of people will go through a similar experience but not be impacted as greatly.
Yeah.
It's about the meaning that I personally have associated with that can create the bigger impact. Whereas comparably, other people are like, I'm fine, I can go on.
Right.
But for me, it becomes difficult. So it's really has a bit of a past focus. Whereas in coaching, you are at a crossroads in the sense that there could be an opportunity, there could be a challenge, there could be just an issue that I'm wanting to resolve, work through, but it's about moving me forward. So coaching is not about a destination per se. It's about putting me on a path towards the thing that I'm looking for. So it has a bit of a forward looking aspect. But because as human beings, we have a beautiful history, and the history is our past events. I may not have sought therapy in terms of the experiences I've had, and now I'm in a coaching partnership with a coach. And some of those issues come to bear because now the exploration of what's standing in the way of me taking advantage of this opportunity,
Sure.
it starts triggering things in my past that have formed beliefs that negate what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
So there is that crossover, and that's why I'm saying we are responsible for people's lives. So if I'm not aware or I cannot see the impact that this past is bringing on to somebody, I can carelessly inquire into that. Whereas I'm digging into like unhealed wounds and past traumas. And then I can just leave somebody to deal with it because I'm a coach and I want to take you forward. So that's why I'm saying we have a huge responsibility, because for me in my career, I've known when to ask someone whether they need more help on that aspect. And it's not me who's going to help them in therapy. That's when we refer. And we can all remain in conversation or in engagement with them seeking therapy for what they're doing, but it doesn't mean it puts a hold on the other things they want to move in their lives.
Right.
So you have almost like a triangular relationship between the client, the therapist, and the coach, and we work in tandem towards paying attention to the things that have been dug up, but also in a respectful manner, adhering to this ambition or this opportunity or this challenge that is moving forward.
Yeah.
The good thing is all our current life issues really stem from our past. So therapy is really a useful practice or modality that is supportive of anyone in their lives. But I see a lot that people who haven't paid attention to it, it surfaces sometimes when they come into coaching.
Yeah. So there may be a number of people who are listening to us, watching us, and when they hear leadership, may say, not talking about me, or this conversation is not for me, because they don't associate themselves with the term leadership. They wouldn't call themselves leaders in any way. And sadly, and working in the media for as long as I have, whenever we speak about leaders, it's the clowns that come to mind, right? Because, and sadly, they've bastardized this very important and heavy title. For somebody who's watching this conversation and they hear the word leadership and they feel they are not leaders, that they don't identify with being called a leader because they've never been elected to be one. They don't do work where they have people that they are responsible for, and that sort of thing. How do you introduce this concept to them to say, regardless of where you are, what you do, you are in effect leading your own life, and in other ways as well, you could be playing that leadership role, whether it's in the home or elsewhere. But for people who just kind of hear that word and distance themselves from it, what would you say to them?
I think you articulated well. Leadership starts with self, right? But I think why bad leadership gets the spotlight and gets so much prominence is because people are impacted gravely by bad leadership. And their reaction to that is potentially what makes it the talking point. And perhaps the impact is so vast that it robs me of my sense of agency. Remember when we started talking that bad leadership in the bigger context has negative impact across the world.
Yeah.
And those are some of the things that people will feel when they try and set out in their journey of leading self, because they are coming up against a lot of constraints, difficulty, no access because things have been blocked. And then the sentiment is, I can't even put myself out there, or I can't even take advantage of opportunities because the leadership in that space is bad. So even if I prepare myself and I do all the necessary things, I'm almost blocked because there's people sitting in power that are not making things accessible.
Yeah.
Right? So that's what creates the deflection, is because my efforts are negatively impacted by what bad leaders do. But I think for this conversation, I really want to emphasize the fact that as human beings, we're leaders of our own lives.
Yeah.
Much as we may feel we don't have agency, but we're making choices every day. And even when we're not making choices, that is a choice.
Yeah.
So whether I choose to not action, I choose not to inquire, I choose not to search for information, I choose not to speak up, I choose not to find alternatives, I'm making a choice. And I will create a world for myself on which I will be a particular person because of all my decisions and actions. And it only doesn't start with decisions and actions. It's my thoughts, right? What preoccupies my daily thinking and focus? Because my thoughts, my emotions, what those emotions bring about, and then my behaviors actually are the sum of my leadership. So I'll start off by saying to people, notice what you're thinking, what you're engaging, what you're consuming, how it's making you feel. What's the predominant mood of your everyday life? And then what does it lead you to? What do you then do as a person because of that? Because that will encapsulate your leadership. So if you're somebody who is trying every day to figure out, and make a plan or engage on something or move forward with something, you're demonstrating leadership for yourself because there's less of a resignation, there's more of an attempt to bring something forward rather than to be resigned within the constraints. And then I guess as a leader, it's your network. We human beings, we are communal beings. We belong in society and in community structures, from our families to the communities we live in, to our churches. I'm not even talking about institutions. I'm just talking about the areas that we're involved with. We've seen people be leaders in schools, in terms of galvanizing for change for their children. That's demonstration of leadership.
Right.
They're not sitting back because the governing body is doing or not doing things. As a parent body, there's leaders there that are saying, we want to put an end to this. It's impacting our children. It's impacting our community. So that's demonstration of leadership. And that's why I'm saying, even before I talk about what position you hold in a company, there's the primary responsibilities, how you lead your family. What sort of values and morals or behaviors are being demonstrated or modeled in that household? And you're the leadership structure in that family, your broader extended family. What are you representing in those spaces? So I feel like leadership has almost, as a concept, maybe has lost its meaning. It's almost been watered down to refer to only certain individuals.
Yeah.
But it's an all-encompassing issue. It's how we drive our life on an individual day. It's the minutes and hours in your day. Demonstrate how you lead your life.
I hate this question where people ask, are leaders born or are they made?
Are you going to ask it though?
No, I'm not. Because I think your answer is already... your response to my previous question speaks to that exact point, that you are it.
Yes.
Even without... taking up a position or anybody naming you that, or going to whatever leadership class and so on. But I think an extension to that terrible question is about the kind of work, right, that one then does to take on big responsibilities, where the decisions you take very consequential, or in fact affect like tens and thousands of people whom you may never meet ever, but then feel, right, the implications of the decision that you've since taken. Again, I'd want you to just kind of speak to what that work looks like, especially in this day, in these uncertain times. But maybe just to close the loop on the previous point about leadership happening here, there, and everywhere, and within the home. I was asking a guest we had yesterday about how men. So you grow up together, we sit next together in class as 6-year-olds in grade 1. We move up, we're in high school, we're in the 12th grade. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, the guy's value or worth changes. Suddenly, there's this wisdom that he has that comes out of nowhere. Suddenly, there's this leadership that he has to now lead the home and so on. That is purely, at least at that stage, a function of the bodies that we are in, right? I'm not talking about somebody who's now gone on and trained and gone to business school and done all sorts of things and they've been certified that you can lead, that you can lead in this area of work. We can trust you with people's careers and their futures. Just because now you are older, your voice is deeper. Now there's this wisdom you suddenly have. That thing playing out within the whole, I find incredibly problematic, especially within the context of many households in this country being single parent households, and those single parents are either women or grandmothers, right? People who, when we think about leaders in society, are not the images that come to mind, sadly, right? You ask young people, when you think about a leader who comes to mind, Nelson Mandela comes to mind, and Julius Malema, all these individuals will come to mind, but never the people who are actually doing the work within the home. I suppose it's a function of, the fact that we don't define that work within the home as a form of leadership. So maybe just to unpack that, and then we kind of get to the other bit about the training and the work itself. Your thoughts about that and how we can begin to shift the narrative on that.
I'm going to go off on a tangent.
Please. Please do.
My definition of a leader growing up was actually my grandmother, and not because she raised me. I was raised, fortunately, by my parents, but I watched my grandmother on principle behave and conduct herself in a way that when I was engaging with it, it felt strict, it felt traditional.
Yeah.
I didn't place a value on it. But when I grew up, I understood that she was actually such a principled woman.
Right.
And I learned about her leadership experience later in life than when she was there. So my grandmother set up an orphanage. She is one of the esteemed people in the Methodist Church who promoted Methodism in the region. She is featured on that book, actually. She worked for Save the Children Fund. She was a teacher. But my understanding of her leadership was how she conducted herself in the family home and some of the principles that she advocated for. And almost in a Hitler-like manner, got us adhering to them.
Yeah.
But now, in hindsight, she's a striking example of a leader, right? Her husband, on the other hand, held many prominent positions. But when I think about leadership, I think of her, and it's because of principles. Secondly, I feel like she was very self-aware. So she knew, even as she imposed some of the principles, that they would have a negative impact on people. There would be resistance. So she was self-aware. And I feel like today, we don't put a lot of emphasis on the importance of self-awareness. So she knew she would rub you up the wrong way by advocating for certain things, but she almost held it in a manner that respected your resistance, your brattishness about it, your almost tantrum about it. She just was steady in her delivery of that principles. But she also would love you in the same sentence. So yes, I'm being harsh, I'm being principled, I'm sticking up my rules, but I'm also being loving and considerate and caring. So in a way, for me, the principles she adhered to and the self-awareness of knowing that this is what I'm doing and the impact of it is going to have a ripple effect. So what I'm finding in today's society is the principle perhaps we lose, particularly you mentioned as our young girls grow up, even in the schooling system, is what am I here to do? And perhaps it's a bigger point in terms of how much maybe our girl children are outward focused in terms of who am I being, rather than more inward focused in terms of the potential and the competency that I have. I've found that, and I'm raising a girl and a boy, that boys innately, maybe it's through competitive sport or being competitive by nature, that they almost have a stronger self-belief in their capability. And that gets inflated over time. It stops being true and it gets bigger and bigger. And that's why they will prostrate about what they can do even before they do it. For younger girls, there's more of an external focus. So I'm less competitive. I'm more seeking belonging in a group of friendships. I don't maybe partake as much in competitive sport. I'm more concerned about, building community and network. And that almost minimizes or reduces the prominence I place on my capability. And therefore, I don't want to shine as much as my counterpart, who's the same age of me, is really wanting that spotlight. And he's even exaggerating what his potential is to be able to get that.
Yeah.
I say that loosely, but there's many studies that show how girls drop their confidence even before the age of 10, and how for boys it starts growing
before the age of 10.
Yes. So that's why at the end of a schooling career, you will find that there's a big difference in terms of how boy children see themselves and girls children see themselves. On a different note, that's why even today, people will still advocate for monastic schools, the schools where you teach girls by themselves and you teach boys by themselves. Because in teaching girls by themselves, you are able to almost insulate them from a potential negative influence that might minimize how they see themselves. The societal and community and building friendship will exist, but you'll put them in spaces where they still tap into who they are. Because again, once the boy and girl dynamic comes in a what do they call the schools where they're mixed, you find that as a girl, co-ed,
yeah.
I'm wanting also to be liked by the boys, right? And therefore that makes me maybe not want to look like I'm brilliant, I'm amazing, because it might be intimidating to the boys. It might be an outdated view, but I feel like that's why schools, you still have a dominance of girls' schools and boys' schools, because there's something we're trying to protect in a girls' school that will ensure that the girls still have their inner belief, their principle, their confidence in who they are. And it's not robbed by being in a mixed environment, so that they can stand their ground when they leave school and they begin a university situation. They might be compromised to some extent because they haven't socialized as much with boys.
Yeah.
But it's to protect that so that they have an even footing when they approach the universities and they're picking careers and they're looking at their next in terms of a career. Because it does feel like an outdated concept to have girls' schools and boys' schools when there's a growing race to have co-eds. But I think it's trying to address that issue, that we still need to preserve something about the girl child and ensuring that she doesn't lose, her confidence, her belief in herself. Otherwise, then it really does compromise who she sees herself as and what sights she sets for herself in the bigger picture.
Yeah. As they say, there's nothing like the confidence of a mediocre man. Sometimes I wish I had some of that, and I don't think that's what girls and women should aspire for, because I do think there's value in evidence-based confidence, right? And actually proving that you can, that you've earned your spot, that you can do something, that and that you're in fact applying yourself. But the world we're in does not necessarily reward that all the time. In fact, it's the bullshitters that get ahead. The people who are able to play the game, as they would say. All sorts of books about corporate politics and all sorts of things. Less about just be bloody good at what you do, be a decent human being, get the job done, and that should be the thing that gets you ahead. And maybe that allows us to kind of segue into how to navigate the times and the environments that we exist in, right? Given all of these dynamics. Now, when you having been raised in or gone to co-ed schools 100%, to girls' schools 100%, and then wanting to get into the workplace, and these are some of the dynamics that you then have to navigate. I suppose the same with boys. And I don't want to downplay their own challenges or their own issues, but I often, when people talk about how the boy child is left behind, and I just feel like the world is still an easier place for boys than it is for girls. Not necessarily easy, but easier because of some of these things. So again, I'm saying a million things, and you'll kind of catch on to what resonates. But coming back to the central question of today is navigating uncertain times. How do both of these groups, and it's not just two groups, right? It's quite broad. Think the Rainbow Nation and so on. But some of the tools to begin to learn about, or think about, or try have access to, so as to navigate these uncertain times. And the uncertainty is so multifaceted.
True. So I'm going to touch a little bit on confidence, because I think it's also a beautiful point, and it's important for leadership. I'll be confident in my leadership because of the confidence I have in myself. And one of the things underlying confidence is the belief I have about myself. a big part of why I'm confident is part of my identity, who I see myself as. And that's why I was referencing the principles in my grandmother's cases. She saw herself as standing for certain things, and her identity as a Black female meant something to her, and she adhered to certain things. So the thing about that's important is that self-identity and knowing what are the values and the beliefs you hold about who you are, but most important, what are you meant to be doing in this world? And what are you meant to be doing is a growing thing. But who you are and what you believe in is probably the fundamentals around it. And maybe we don't place a lot of emphasis around that when we raise our kids. We're always looking at what they do as an outcome. So we've gone to such a performance measure. Is she doing well at school? Is she doing well at sport? Is she doing that? But we almost undermine her character and the qualities of her character, because those are the principles that will govern how she lives her life. It's going to be about her being. And then secondly, I spoke about, self-awareness, just being able to notice yourself and the impact you have, big or small, especially in your surroundings. What happens to people when I'm with them or when I'm not with them? So almost being aware that, do I bring joy? Do I bring frustration or irritation or annoyance? What is it? What's the impact of me being with people, right? And I think we underestimate that, but the power in knowing your input will know whether you're influencing positively or negatively in situations, or whether you're not making an impact. Your presence is not being felt. You're almost behind the scenes. You're part of something, but you're not standing for it. So I'm finding that a lot of that are subtle things, but when they're absent, they have a big consequence. When they're present, they create the gravitas. So for me, it's like, how much emphasis do we place on understanding people's beings, the qualities that define them? And then for themselves, do they know the impact they have in situations? What are they bringing forth in the forums that they're in? It could be in a friendship. Why are there people that are your friends? What is it that they value about you as a friend? What are you bringing to the friendship? Because that then that's the first circle you have in your family, secondary, in the communities that you are. Then it starts beginning a pattern. Then the icing, the cherry on the top is the things you do.
Right.
But it's almost like in life, we've put the things we do at the forefront, and we've almost undermined the beautiful essence of who are you and what's the impact you're having in the spaces that you are. And then you'll do amazing things if it's being led from that foundational knowledge of knowing yourself and knowing the impact you create.
And the knowledge of self, and if you take some of these tests and personality tests and things like that, those aren't meant to be a box. Like, if you heard people who and maybe not necessarily referencing a personality test, or even just like what are these things, the month when you born a certain month, you astrology, there we go. And now, yes, it's because when I hate when somebody does it to you and they're like, yep, I'm a Gemini, yep, that's very, I'm just, what? Can I just be Sebenzile, who happens to be, Gemini and many other things? It's not meant to be a box. It's just meant to make sense of what is already there.
And we've become reductionist as people. Because you're Gemini, then you're this.
Yeah.
Whereas those personality tests about knowing yourself or assessments are just one data piece.
Right.
It's one piece in the puzzle. There's a whole lot more that makes up who you are. But we're so reductionist that we just look at that one piece and we say it defines it. It's almost like we're lazy to be curious, to want to understand, to want to see the whole person in the sense that we do that. But I think even those personality tests are strands that you must be able to put together. If you think about what influenced me in my early childhood, what influenced me in my formative years, what influenced me in my latter years, all those things have shaped me. They're almost like strands. But if you think of all the strands that have influenced you, then you're able to weave a pattern around who you are. And some of those strands come from self-knowledge.
Yeah.
Just being in touch with who you are and what it feels like, how you think and how you action things. All those strands come together, and then you've got this beautiful tapestry of who you are. That's not built on one story, right? So you could be listening to your mom who says to you, oh, Sebe, growing up, this is how you used to behave, right? You used to get in trouble at school. You were always pushing the envelope. That's one beautiful strand. It doesn't confine you to anything, right? You understand that about yourself. You take an Enneagram test, for instance. It shows you something else. You sit in your reviews with your manager, etc. It shows you something else. Your friends also show you something else. Build a tapestry of an understanding of yourself that's more holistic. And that actually is a pure representation of you rather than sticking to one thing. Because it could be self-serving. If I feel like I want to be this way, I can always use that personality test that says I'm that way. So it's hard for me to change. But I think in principle, it's never hard for us to change.
Yeah.
Human beings, we are developing and evolving. And in these changing times, the ask is that we shouldn't be static. We shouldn't be stoic. We shouldn't be like hell-bent on being one thing.
Yeah.
These challenging times, I said earlier, are asking us to be emergent, to respond to what's happening, to let go of the things we've held tightly, that the world needs to be like this. The world is showing us it's not one type of a way. So we need to be emergent. So the tapestry must always be developing. What new capabilities can I develop? What new insights can I learn? What new spaces can I go into? So for me, our story as human beings and as leaders is we're a developing tapestry. We're always going to need to evolve. What we were before is constraining. It was about that time. But what we need to be is an evolving tapestry.
So for somebody who's watching this and says, all right, ngiyakuzwa Phetsile, self at the center, how do I start though? Especially if I've never been exposed to this. That it's always just about getting stuff done, maybe as a dude, indoor must, and that's all it's about, that there's no room for you to be a range of things, that sometimes the difficult circumstances that the people find themselves in as a result of an economy that's not growing, just barely, it's just not growing, high rates of unemployment, high rates of people just being disheartened, right? Because it just seems as though everything is against you. And so when they may listen to this conversation and say, kahle kahle nithini, given everything that's happening and being aware of self, where does one actually start? Because we want to see the outcome externally. But here, the invitation is that we look inward. How do people start?
I think the first starting point is to be open and to let go of some of the assumptions we've made about ourselves. So remember, even if we're not saying it vocally, we're already saying I'm a failure, I'm not going to be successful, or it's difficult for me, or I'm not fortunate. There's a narrative that I'm already living into. And when I say there's a narrative, there's the story I'm telling myself about who I am. And that story could have been great. It could have got me to this point. But maybe I'm at a point where I need to change character, literally. I need to take on a different narrative. I need to see myself differently. So there's an opening to letting go about what is keeping me stuck.
Yeah.
And perhaps not feeling a level of fulfillment or not even actualizing the things that I want to do. There's something about letting go and being open to a new way and a different way. And as I was saying earlier, human development theory, there is no end. There's no plateauing we have in life. We have opportunities to keep growing and developing. And maybe that's something we're also not taught. We think it gets to a certain age where umdala and you must know. But that's actually a false assumption. Every opportunity and experience grows you and develops you. So there's no cutoff. So that's the second piece. People must know that there will always be an opportunity. We see very mothers going to varsity with their kids. We see so many people launching a book at 50, 60 years. It's a demonstration of the fact that that person maybe shed off that narrative of I can't into one that I can. So that's the second part. So there's an openness and knowing that I can be something. As long as I'm alive, right? And I am on this earth, it means, and I'm going to be spiritual here, God is giving me a chance to live out the purpose. Remember, we're born unique. Everyone is born with almost an imprint and a promise of what they're here to bring into the world. And I know that might sound daunting, but as long as you're alive, you're still here to do something. It stops when you die. So the second point is be curious about what it is that you are here to do in this world, that nobody else is here to do because of our uniqueness. So it can't be done by Sebe, it can't be done by me, it can only be done by you. And I think those are two starting points that almost remove the field around your eyes that says it's dusk, nothing can happen. But it begins a curiosity around, I wonder what it is that I'm supposed to do today in this world, right? Because then nobody knows it but me and maybe God. So then it begins me on a journey of saying, is it worth the search? Because of the discomfort I'm feeling now, would going on this search be more fulfilling? Would it be more of an answer? Would it be something that takes me in a different direction? So, and that's a personal reflection. You can do it alone, you can do it with a partner, you can do it with a friend. But just be curious about what's the story I've been living today? Who have I been and for what? And then who might I be if I lived into the promise of what my unique purpose is in this world and what I'm here to do? And then, obviously, there's a lot of interventions that help people step out in the direction of that. And that's where coaching becomes inevitable. Coaching is a modality that's helping you chart that way forward. It's understanding your current levels of self-awareness. It's helping you investigate your current patterns of behavior that could be constraining. And it's helping you build new competencies about how you're going to step out in this world in a new way. So that's where the modality of coaching comes in, because in coaching, I'll help you see the limitations of how you see yourself, help you see the blind spots, the things that you're not noticing. Yeah. Help you build the bridge between your now and your next. So that's a little spin on coaching.
It's a good note to end it on. I'm very appreciative that you made the time, that you always make time. You're one of the wisest people. I'm very privileged to know, and also very patient, because I feel like sometimes I ask you something, you're just like, oh my gosh, I'm tired, this child. But I'm so glad we could have this conversation. We started off by me asking how you're entering this conversation. So let me ask you, an hour and plus in, how are you exiting this conversation?
I think I'm leaving this conversation grateful that this type of a conversation is getting the spotlight to people, because a lot of times we're so externally focused. We're looking at the bad that's happening. We're looking at the misfortunes. We're looking at how we aren't able to advocate or do things differently. We're almost not impacting life the way that we want it to be shaped. But we spend less and less attention introspecting and looking at what we could be doing differently. And how, as individuals, our agency is the first starting point to the change we want to see. So if we show up differently and make our own individual contributions, the world will be in a different place. We'll be less reliant on the choices and the bad decisions of bad leaders, but we'll have more agency to be able to make a difference. So I'm grateful that, there's platforms that seek to promote this kind of thinking and this level of introspection for individuals, because this is the empowerment that people actually need, rather than looking externally to be given things and to be enabled by what others can do for them. It's more a case of what can I do for myself.
So when are you coming back?
Yeah. I'm coming back because I've got a lot of exciting programs that are supportive of people who are embarking on this space, and a lot to talk about the initiatives that people can be a part of, and also to just create scaffolding for people as they work this journey, because it isn't easy. I'm speaking about it as if it's easy, but it's probably the most difficult part of anyone's journey when they embark on a journey of self-knowledge, self-improvement, self-awareness.
I can't wait to have you back, because of all the insights you have to share, and also because I enjoy bugging you. Thank you. All right. That's where we leave it. Thank you very much to Phetsile Dlamini for joining us for this installment of Context, because when you have context, everything looks different. Until next time, I am Sebenzile Nkambule. Make sure that you follow Context with Sebenzile Nkambule wherever you watch. See you later.